My wife Jenna and I poured our hearts, souls, and every spare penny into transforming our yard into the most incredible Halloween display our town had ever seen. It was a masterpiece of spooky delight, and the neighborhood kids, and even their parents, absolutely loved it. But then Karen Lin, our HOA's self-appointed queen, declared war, demanding we dismantle our terrifyingly good fun. Little did she know, her complaint was about to ignite a Halloween party so epic she'd be forced to watch the entire town celebrate right on her doorstep. Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button to make my day and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. The haunting of Maple Street. The late September air already carried a crisp promise of autumn, a scent of decaying leaves and wood smoke that always filled me with an anticipatory hum. For me, Nolan Bennett, a 33-year-old special effects artist, and my wife Jenna, a 31-year-old event planner, autumn meant one thing above all else: Halloween. It wasn't just a holiday, it was a season, a canvas, an excuse to unleash the macabre creativity that simmered within us year-round. Our modest suburban home on Maple Street might have looked unassuming for 10 months of the year, but come October, it transformed. This year, however, we had decided to go all out. We've been saving, sketching, and scheming since last November. Jenna, with her meticulous organizational skills and an eye for aesthetic horror, handled the thematic cohesion and flow, ensuring every detail contributed to a cohesive, immersive experience. I, with my practical knowledge of animatronics, lighting, and sound design gleaned from years in the film industry, was the mad scientist bringing her visions to life. Our vision for the front yard this year was the cursed Carnival. Imagine it: flickering carnival lights, skeletal clowns with glowing eyes, a decrepit fortune-teller's tent, and a carousel of grotesque creatures slowly rotating to an eerie, distorted calliope music. We wanted visitors, especially the kids, to feel like they'd stepped into a forgotten nightmare circus. We spent weeks in our garage, meticulously crafting props, soldering wires, programming light sequences. Our weekends were consumed by trips to specialty stores, scouring online forums, and late-night brainstorming sessions fueled by cold coffee and a shared giddy excitement. The first animatronic, a life-sized clown named Giggles with articulated limbs and a sinister cackle, went up in the last week of September. He was positioned by the ancient oak tree, his red nose glowing faintly, his painted smile wide and unsettling. The neighborhood kids, walking home from school, stopped dead in their tracks, a mixture of fear and delight on their faces. Their shrieks and excited chatter were music to our ears. That initial reaction was the fuel that kept us going through long nights and sore backs. Jenna, ever the pragmatic one, had insisted we budget for everything, down to the last fog machine. "Nolan," she'd said, "we can't just throw money at this. It has to be spectacular, but also financially sound." We even factored in the electricity bill, anticipating a significant jump. Our combined income was comfortable, but not extravagant, and every penny committed to the cursed Carnival was a calculated investment in our shared passion. We spent close to $5,000, a sum that felt significant, but justified by the sheer joy we anticipated. As October rolled in, the display grew. A towering archway, shaped like a fanged mouth, marked the entrance to our yard. String lights, designed to look like glowing spider webs, crisscrossed between trees. Gravestones, carefully carved to look ancient and moss-covered, emerged from strategically placed fog. A projector cast spectral images of ghostly clowns dancing on the side of our house. The calliope music, designed to swell and fade, sometimes punctuated by screams or maniacal laughter, was carefully calibrated not to be overwhelmingly loud, but just unsettling enough. The word spread like wildfire. Cars slowed as they drove by, passengers craning their necks. Parents brought their children by in the evenings, some just to look from the sidewalk, others brave enough to venture into the carnival itself, giggling nervously as giggles cackled or a spectral hand reached out from Bran. Behind a prop, our yard became a landmark, a destination. Neighbors stopped us on walks, showering us with compliments. "This is amazing, Nolan!" Mr. Henderson from 2 houses down exclaimed one morning. "You guys have truly outdone yourselves. My grandkids talk about it constantly." Jenna and I swelled with pride. This wasn't just about decorating, it was about creating a shared experience for our community, sparking joy and a little bit of thrilling fear. We even started planning a small, casual block party for Halloween night itself, envisioning kids trick-or-treating in the midst of our haunted masterpiece. Then, the first letter arrived. It was in a thick, cream-colored envelope with the official insignia of the Maple Street Homeowners Association, or HOA, embossed on the flap. I groaned. I knew what this was about. The HOA, particularly its vice president, Karen Lin, was notorious for its rigid adherence to rules, real or imagined. Karen, a woman of 57 with perpetually pursed lips and an almost military bearing, seemed to exist solely to enforce her version of neighborhood order. She'd given us disapproving glances during our setup, though she hadn't said anything directly. I ripped open the envelope. The letter, typed in a formal, impersonal font, cited excessive ornamentation, noise disturbance, and potential safety hazards as violations of Article 7, Section B of the HOA bylaws, pertaining to exterior property appearance and nuisances. It demanded that the offending display be dismantled within 72 hours or face escalating fines and further action. It was signed in a flourish by Karen Lin, Vice President of the Maple Street HOA. My blood ran cold. Jenna, who had been humming a spooky tune as she watered her indoor plants, noticed my sudden stillness. "What is it, honey?" she asked, her brow furrowing as she saw the paper in my hand. I handed her the letter, my jaw tight. "Karen Lin," I muttered, the name tasting like ash on my tongue. "The witch of the HOA has spoken." Jenna read the letter, her expression shifting from confusion to outrage. "A nuisance? Excessive ornamentation? Nolan, this is ridiculous. Everyone loves it. She's just trying to spoil everyone's fun." "I know," I said, a bitter taste in my mouth. My passion project, our labor of love, reduced to offending display and nuisance. It felt like a personal attack. What do? We can't just take it down. Not after all this work, all the joy it's brought. "No," Jenna said, her eyes narrowing with a determination I admired. "We absolutely do not take it down. There has to be a way around this." She tapped the letter thoughtfully. She cited vague rules. We need to find something concrete, and if not, then we find a bigger hammer. Her words sparked a flicker of hope in me. Jenna was an event planner. She knew how to navigate bureaucracy, how to rally support, how to turn a problem into an opportunity. Karen Lin might be the HOA queen, but Jenna was about to show her that sometimes the best way to fight a small-minded bully was to go big. Much, much bigger. The war for Halloween on Maple Street had just officially begun. A bigger hammer. The next 72 hours were a blur of frantic research, heated discussions, and simmering frustration. We pored over the entire HOA rulebook, a dense tome of regulations that seemed designed more to control than to foster community. Karen Lin had indeed cherry-picked vague clauses, twisting them to fit her narrative. Excessive ornamentation was subjective. Noise disturbance was debatable given our carefully calibrated sound levels, and potential safety hazards was outright absurd, as we had ensured every wire was tepier, safely tucked away, and every prop secured. "She's grasping at straws," Jenna declared, slamming the rulebook shut one evening. Her usually vibrant face was etched with exhaustion, but her eyes burned with a defiant spark. "There's nothing here that specifically prohibits holiday decorations of this scale. It's all about maintaining aesthetic standards and avoiding undue disturbance. Our display brings joy, not disturbance." "Tell that to Karen," I grumbled, rubbing my temples. The thought of dismantling Giggles and his terrifying friends filled me with a deep sense of despair. It felt like admitting defeat, like letting a bully win. "No," Jenna said, a slow, mischievous smile spreading across her face. "We don't tell Karen anything. We go over her head." "The HOA board?" I asked, skeptical. "They're probably all best friends with her." "Higher," Jenna said, her smile widening into a grin. "Much higher. Do you remember Mayor Thompson?" My eyebrows shot up. Mayor Thompson, our town's mayor, a surprisingly approachable and community-minded politician, known for his love of local events and family-friendly initiatives. "What about him?" "He came by last week, remember, with his grandkids. He spent a good 20 minutes in the yard talking to you about your animatronics, laughing at Giggles. He seemed genuinely impressed." Jenna's eyes gleamed with a newfound purpose. "He even posted about it on his official social media, remember? Said something like, 'Maple Street is leading the way in Halloween spirit.' We just need to remind him of that." A slow understanding dawned on me. "You want to invite the mayor to interfere in an HOA dispute?" "Not interfere," Jenna corrected, pulling out her laptop. "Leverage. We frame this not as a dispute, but as a community initiative that's being stifled by petty bureaucracy. Our Halloween display isn't just our private decoration anymore, Nolan. It's a beloved local attraction. And if a local attraction is under threat, perhaps the city mayor might be interested in protecting it." Her plan, audacious as it was, held a certain genius. Instead of fighting Karen on her terms, we would elevate the conversation, transform a neighborhood squabble into a matter of public interest. Jenna, with her event planning acumen, drafted an email. It was polite, professional, yet subtly urgent. Explained the situation, highlighting the positive impact our display had on the community, the hundreds of visitors it attracted, and the joy it brought to children. It then delicately mentioned the HOA complaint, framing it as a threat to a WA, beloved community tradition, and concluded with a tentative suggestion. Perhaps, if the display was such a draw, the city might consider making it an official part of the town's Halloween celebrations, possibly even hosting the annual block party at our location. "It's a long shot," I cautioned, though a flicker of hope had ignited in my chest. "Maybe," Jenna said, hitting send. "But it's a shot worth taking. And, if it works, Karen Lin won't just be watching from her window. She'll be seeing red." The waiting was agonizing. For 2 days we kept the display exactly as it was, ignoring the accusatory glances from Karen Lin whenever she emerged from her perfectly manicured lawn. The 72-hour deadline loomed large. We braced ourselves for another letter, perhaps a notice of a fine rat. Then, on the afternoon of the 3rd day, just hours before Karen's deadline expired, my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number, but with a local area code. My heart pounded as I answered. "Nolan Bennett?" A cheerful, familiar voice asked. "This is Mayor Thompson." My jaw dropped. I quickly put the call on speaker so Jenna, who was hovering anxiously nearby, could hear. "Mr. Bennett," the mayor continued, "I received your wife's email, and I must say I'm absolutely delighted. That Halloween display of yours, it's truly remarkable. My grandkids are still talking about it. And frankly, the idea of hosting our annual city Halloween block party right there, amidst your incredible creations, it's brilliant. A stroke of genius, if I may say so." Jenna and I exchanged wide-eyed, triumphant glances. This was it, the bigger hammer. "We'd be honored, Mayor," I managed to stammer, a giddy smile spreading across my face. "Excellent." Mayor Thompson boomed. "Consider it done. My office will handle all the logistics, permits, security, everything. We'll make it an official city event. We'll get the local media involved. It'll be the biggest Halloween celebration our town has ever seen." "How does Halloween night sound for the official block party?" "Perfect, Mayor," Jenna interjected, her voice brimming with barely contained excitement. "Absolutely perfect." "Wonderful! My assistant will be in touch tomorrow with all the details." "And Mr. Bennett, Ms. Bennett," the mayor added, his tone taking on a conspiratorial note. "Don't you worry about any HOA complaints. Once this is an official city event, under my office's purview, those petty grievances will simply vanish. We're bringing joy to the community, and that's what truly matters." He hung up, leaving Jenna and me in stunned silence, a mixture of disbelief and exhilaration washing over us. The victory was sweet, almost unbelievably so. We had gone from facing down a neighborhood tyrant to hosting the entire town's Halloween celebration. The cursed carnival was not only saved, it was about to become legendary. And Karen Lin? She was about to get a front-row seat to the biggest party her rigid little rulebook ever failed to prevent. The anticipation of her reaction was almost as thrilling as the party itself. The mayor's proclamation, the phone call from Mayor Thompson, ignited a new frenzy of activity. This wasn't just about saving our Halloween display anymore. It was about orchestrating a massive citywide event in our front yard. Jenna, in her element, became a whirlwind of planning, her eyes alight with the challenge. Her experience as an event planner was invaluable. I, meanwhile, felt a renewed surge of creative energy, suddenly tasked with making the cursed carnival not just impressive, but capable of handling hundreds of visitors. The mayor's office was incredibly efficient. Within 24 hours, his assistant, a brisk woman named Ms. Davies, was in her living room, armed with blueprints, city ordinances, and a surprisingly large budget for the event. She outlined the logistics: street closures, portable restrooms, security personnel, a designated area for food trucks, even a small stage for local entertainment. Our quiet Maple Street was about to become the epicenter of Halloween in our town. "The mayor wants this to be a showcase for community spirit," Ms. Davies explained, her pen flying across a notepad. "He sees your display as a truly unique asset. He's already alerted the local media, and the Town Gazette wants to do a feature story next week. We'll also put out an official press release." Jenna's smile was wider than I'd seen it in weeks. "This is incredible, Ms. Davies. We're so grateful." "Nonsense," Ms. Davies replied. "The mayor believes in fostering local talent and community engagement. You two are providing both in spades." She looked around our living room, at the subtle Halloween decorations already peeking out. "Just one thing, Mr. Bennett, Mrs. Bennett. The mayor emphasized that this party is about family fun and community. While your display is wonderfully spooky, we need to ensure it's accessible and enjoyable for all ages. Perhaps dial back anything truly terrifying, just slightly." "Absolutely." I agreed, already mentally adjusting my animatronic programming. Giggles could cackle, but perhaps not quite so maniacally. The ghostly projections could be more ethereal, less grotesque. We wanted thrills, not nightmares. The news spread through the neighborhood like a brush fire. At first, there was confusion, then disbelief, then an outpouring of excitement. People who had only admired our display from a distance were now actively approaching us, offering help, asking how they could contribute. Our mailbox, once filled with HOA complaints, was now overflowing with cards and letters of support, handmade drawings from kids, and even a few anonymous gift baskets. The reaction from Karen Lin, predictably, was incandescent. She had to have heard the whispers, seen the city vehicles surveying our street. The mayor's official announcement, which appeared as a full-page ad in the town gazette and a prominent banner on the city's website, must have been a physical blow to her. It proudly proclaimed, "Mayor Thompson announces annual city Halloween block party, hosted at Nolan and Jenna Bennett's renowned Cursed Carnival display." I didn't see Karen in person, but I saw her reaction, albeit indirectly. Her carefully manicured lawn, usually a pristine emerald, was suddenly littered with discarded flyers from local businesses, as if she'd been furiously shredding paper. Her curtains, usually drawn just so, seemed to twitch more often, like an angry eye watching our every move. The passive-aggressive glares she used to give us across the street escalated into full-blown scowls if we happened to make eye contact. We, of course, responded with cheerful waves, which only seemed to intensify her fury. One afternoon, a few days before Halloween, I was adjusting the lighting on a skeletal organist when a white-knuckled fist pounded on our front door. Jenna, who was Emery, inside coordinating food truck schedules, answered it. I heard Karen Lin's voice, shrill and indignant, pierce the autumn air. "This is an outrage!" Karen shrieked. "You cannot do this. This violates every single rule of this homeowners association. My property values will plummet. The noise alone will be unbearable. I demand you cancel this immediate." Jenna, ever calm in a crisis, cut her off, her voice firm and polite. "Ms. Lin, with all due respect, this event is now officially sanctioned by the mayor's office. All necessary permits have been secured, and the city is handling all logistics. Any concerns about noise or traffic should be directed to City Hall." There was a moment of stunned silence from Karen, as if Jenna had just spoken in ancient Sumerian. But the HOA! Aye! She sputtered, sputtering, grasping for any remaining shred of authority. "The HOA's authority," Jenna replied smoothly, "extends to private residences and common areas, not to city-sanctioned public events. Once the street is closed and the city takes over, it falls under their jurisdiction, not yours. I suggest you consult your bylaws, Ms. Lin, and perhaps, instead of complaining, you might consider enjoying the festivities. It's going to be quite a celebration for the community." Karen was speechless, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Her face was puce with indignation. She stood there for a few more seconds, completely defeated, then spun on her heel and stomped off, muttering incoherently under her breath. Jenna closed the door, a triumphant smile blooming on her face. "That," she announced, walking back to me, "felt incredibly satisfying." "You handled her perfectly," I said, giving her a high five. The mayor's proclamation really shut her down. The final days leading up to Halloween were a flurry of activity. City workers set up barricades, strung banners, and installed temporary lighting. Local businesses signed up to sponsor booths, eager to be part of the highly publicized event. Volunteers, many of them our neighbors, offered their time to help with setup, security, and crowd management. Maple Street, once a quiet suburban lane, was transforming into a vibrant festival ground. I fine-tuned the Cursed Carnival to perfection. Giggles still cackled, but now his laughter was more mischievous than menacing. The ghostly projections danced playfully. The music, while still eerie, was balanced with more whimsical tunes. It was still a haunted carnival, but one designed to delight rather than genuinely terrify. On the morning of Halloween, the weather was perfect, cool, crisp, with a hint of sunshine. The air buzzed with excitement. Our front yard, our home, was about to become the heart of our community's celebration. As I looked out at the transformed street, I couldn't help but feel a profound sense of satisfaction. Karen Lin had tried to shut us down, to stifle joy and community spirit. Instead, she had inadvertently sparked something far grander, something that would bring hundreds of people together in celebration. The mayor's proclamation had not just saved our Halloween, it had turned our small act of defiance into a triumph for the entire town. And somewhere behind drawn curtains, Karen Lin was undoubtedly fuming, a fittingly bitter treat for a woman who had tried to spoil everyone else's fun. The cursed carnival comes alive. Halloween night arrived, cloaked in a velvet sky dotted with a million stars. The air hummed with an almost palpable energy, a mixture of anticipation and the crisp chill that promised a perfect trick-or-treating evening. Our street, usually quiet and unassuming, was now transformed. Bright, temporary floodlights illuminated the mayor's official banners proclaiming the annual City Halloween Block Party, with our address proudly displayed. Street barricades, manned by smiling city volunteers, directed excited families toward our block. Inside our yard, the cursed carnival was alive. The meticulously programmed lights pulsed and flickered, casting dynamic shadows that made the animatronics seem to breathe. Giggles, our infamous clown, swung gently from the oak tree, his red nose glowing, his cackle now a playful invitation rather than a sinister threat. The carousel of grotesque creatures spun slowly, their painted eyes following the movement of the growing crowd. The eerie calliope music, blended with more festive, spooky tunes, drifted through the air, creating an immersive soundtrack for the unfolding magic. Jenna, a true maestro of events, was everywhere at once. Dressed as a ringmaster, complete with a top hat and a sparkly whip used only for dramatic pointing, of course, she moved through the crowd, directing volunteers, greeting guests, and radiating an infectious dash. Enthusiasm. Her face glowed with pride and excitement, a stark contrast to the weary frustration she'd worn just weeks ago. I, in my mad scientist costume, complete with a wild wig and goggles perched on my head, was a permanent fixture by the control panel, subtly adjusting sound levels, activating special effects, and ensuring every animatronic performed flawlessly. The crowd began to swell around 5 o'clock. First, a trickle of costumed children, hands outstretched, accompanied by equally excited parents. Then, the floodgates opened. Hundreds of people, from every corner of our town and even beyond, poured onto Maple Street. It was a kaleidoscope of superheroes, princesses, ghosts, zombies, and witches, all eager to experience the cursed carnival and the mayor's block party. The sheer volume of people was astounding, a testament to the power of community spirit and a direct refutation of Karen Lin's attempts to stifle it. Kids, their faces alight with wonder, shrieked with delight as giggles moved, or gasped with feigned terror as a motion-activated skeleton popped out from behind a prop. Parents, many of whom had only heard about our display, marveled at the intricate details, the sheer scale of our creation. "This is incredible, Nolan!" exclaimed a mother dressed as a fairy godmother, her 3 little pumpkins clinging to her legs. "We saw it on the news, but it's even better in person. Thank you for doing this." Mayor Thompson arrived fashionably late, making a grand entrance with his family, all dressed as characters from a classic horror movie. He was greeted with cheers and applause, a clear indication of the town's appreciation for his intervention. He immediately sought us out, shaking our hands with a hearty smile. "Nolan, Jenna," he boomed over the festive din. "This is simply spectacular. Beyond all my expectations. You two are truly an asset to this community." He then turned to the assembled local media, who had been trailing him like shadows. "As you can see," he announced, gesturing grandly at the bustling scene, "this is what true community spirit looks like. Not petty squabbles, but shared joy, creativity, and coming together. Mr. and Mrs. Bennett have truly outdone themselves, providing a fantastic, safe, and fun Halloween experience for all. Cameras flashed, microphones were thrust in our faces, and reporters asked rapid-fire questions. Jenna, always poised, eloquently spoke about our passion for Halloween and our desire to bring joy to the neighborhood. I, slightly less articulate but no less enthusiastic, explained the technical aspects of the animatronics, proudly showcasing Giggle's smooth movements and the complex lighting patterns. It was surreal, being interviewed by local news channels, our faces broadcast across the town, all thanks to a spiteful HOA complaint. Food trucks lined the blocked-off street, their enticing aromas mixing with the scent of fog machine fluid and autumn leaves. A local band, dressed as vampires, played spooky tunes on the makeshift stage. Children dashed between trick-or-treat stations, their bags growing heavier with candy. Neighbors chatted animatedly, sharing stories, laughter, and the infectious spirit of the evening. Our front yard, the very space Karen Lin had deemed a nuisance, was now the vibrant heart of a thriving community celebration. And Karen Lin? We hadn't seen her since Jenna had politely but firmly dismissed her at our door. But we knew she was there. Her house, directly across the street, was a beacon of anti-Halloween defiance. All her lights were off, her curtains were drawn tight, and not a single festive decoration adorned her perfectly manicured lawn. It was a dark, silent bunker amidst a sea of joyous light and sound. As the evening wore on and the crowd swelled, I couldn't resist a subtle glance across the street. A flicker, a faint movement behind one of Karen's tightly drawn curtains. She was watching. She had to be. Forced to witness the very spectacle she had tried so desperately to shut down, unfolding directly in front of her. The rhythmic thumping of the music, the delighted screams of children, the bright lights of the carnival, the constant stream of people flowing into our yard, a river of humanity celebrating the very thing she abhorred. I imagined her, sitting in her darkened living room, seething, stewing in her own bitter resentment. The thought brought a small, satisfying smile to my face. This wasn't just about winning. It was about the triumph of community, of joy, of shared celebration over petty grievances and stifling rules. Her attempt to crush our Halloween spirit had only amplified it 100-fold. Around 8 o'clock, as the last rays of twilight faded and the full moon cast a silvery glow on the scene, Mayor Thompson stepped onto the temporary stage. He thanked everyone for coming, praised the community spirit, and then, with a grand gesture, pointed directly at our house. "And of course," he announced, his voice booming through the loudspeakers, a massive round of applause for Nolan and Jenna Bennett, who generously opened their home and shared their incredible talent to make this year's Halloween block party an unforgettable success. The roar of applause and cheers was deafening. Jenna squeezed my hand, her eyes shining with tears of joy. We bowed, waving to the enthusiastic crowd. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated triumph. Later, as the crowd slowly began to disperse, leaving behind a delightful mess of candy wrappers and happy memories, Jenna and I stood in our yard, exhausted but exhilarated. The cursed carnival was still glowing, its animatronics moving, its music playing, a silent monument to our victory. I glanced across the street one last time. Karen Lin's house remained dark, silent, but I knew she had watched. She had heard every laugh, every cheer, every word of praise. And in that moment, I realized that the best revenge wasn't just success, but overwhelming, undeniable, publicly celebrated success. The block party had been everything we dreamed of, and more. And for Karen Lin, it had been a nightmare of her own making, played out in excruciating detail, right on her very own doorstep. Our Halloween was complete, and the sweet taste of victory was far better than any candy. The aftermath and unexpected allies the morning after the Halloween block party was a surreal landscape of discarded candy wrappers, stray glitter, and the lingering scent of fob machine fluid. Our front yard, which had hosted hundreds of joyful revelers, now looked like a cheerful battlefield. Exhaustion weighed heavily on us, but it was a satisfying, triumphant kind of exhaustion. Jenna and I, fueled by lukewarm coffee, began the monumental task of dismantling the cursed Carnival. It was bittersweet, taking down the props and animatronics that had brought so much joy, but the memories of the previous night would last a lifetime. As we carefully packed Giggles into his storage box, a gentle knock sounded at our door. It was Mrs. Henderson, our neighbor from 2 houses down, a sweet woman in her late 60s who always had a kind word. She held a plate covered with a napkin, and her eyes were twinkling. "Good morning, you two," she chirped. "I just wanted to bring over some fresh-baked muffins. You must be absolutely wiped out after last night. What a spectacular party. My grandchildren haven't stopped talking about it." "Thank you, Mrs. Henderson," Jenna said, genuinely touched. "That's so kind of you. It was quite a night." "Indeed." Mrs. Henderson leaned in conspiratorially. "You know," she whispered, "I saw Karen Lin peeking through her curtains almost the entire evening. Her face was positively green. Served her right. I say, that woman has been a menace to this neighborhood for years, always complaining about something. It's about time someone stood up to her." Her words were a validation, a confirmation that our efforts resonated beyond just our personal satisfaction. Over the next few days, as we continued to break down the display, a steady stream of neighbors stopped by, offering help, bringing food, or simply sharing their appreciation. The block party had inadvertently fostered a new sense of camaraderie on Maple Street, uniting residents against the common, if invisible, antagonist that was Karen Lin's controlling nature. The local media continued their coverage. The Town Gazette ran a front-page spread with a huge photo of our cursed carnival in full swing, children laughing in costumes, and a beaming Mayor Thompson. The article praised our creativity and community spirit, indirectly condemning the minor administrative hurdles that had almost prevented the event. It was a public humiliation for Karen Lin, delivered subtly but effectively. Karen herself remained unseen for days. Her curtains stayed drawn, her perfectly manicured lawn unnervingly quiet. It was clear she was licking her wounds, perhaps contemplating her next move, or perhaps simply seething in impotent rage. We knew, however, that her silence was not surrender. It was the calm before a new, equally passive-aggressive storm. A week later, the dreaded official HOA letter arrived. This one, however, was different. It wasn't a complaint, but a formal notification of a special HOA board meeting, specifically called to discuss recent events pertaining to property regulations and community relations. And, to our surprise, it listed a motion to review Article 7, Section B, the very clause Karen had used against us. "She's regrouping," I said, reading the notice. "Trying to change the rules to prevent this from happening again." Jenna, ever strategic, smiled. "Or, she's trying to save face. This meeting is her attempt to reassert her authority, but if we play this right, it could backfire spectacularly." We decided to attend the meeting. Not to argue, not to defend, but to present ourselves as reasonable, community-minded individuals. We spent an evening preparing, not just on the technicalities of the rules, but on the narrative we wanted to convey, one of fostering joy, creating community, and challenging stifling bureaucracy. The HOA meeting was held in the small, sterile community clubhouse. The air was thick with unspoken tension. The room was packed, more neighbors than usual attending, a clear sign of the interest stirred by the Halloween debacle. Karen Lin sat at the head of the table, flanked by the other board members, her expression tight and unyielding. She didn't acknowledge us as we entered, her gaze fixed on her meticulously organized papers. The meeting began with the usual tedious reports. Then, it moved to new business. Karen cleared her throat, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. As you all know, she began, there have been recent events that have highlighted certain ambiguities in our current bylaws, particularly regarding exterior decorations and noise levels. It has become clear that some residents interpret these rules rather loosely, leading to situations that compromise the peaceful enjoyment of our castas neighborhood. Her veiled accusations were clear. She then formally proposed a series of amendments to Article 7, Section B, making it far more restrictive. The proposed changes included specific limits on the size and duration of outdoor decorations, strict noise curfews for any outdoor displays, and a mandatory approval process for anything deemed non-standard by the HOA board. It was a direct attempt to legislate away any future cursed carnivals. A few of the usual HOA loyal residents nodded along, but the majority of the room was silent, many glancing uneasily at us. Then, the floor was opened for questions and comments. Mrs. Henderson, emboldened by the recent success of the block party, was the first to raise her hand. "Karen," she began, her voice firm, "with all due respect, the Halloween display on Nolan and Jenna's property brought so much joy to this community. My grandchildren and countless others absolutely adored it. Why are we talking about restricting such positive initiatives?" Karen's smile tightened. "Mrs. Henderson, while we appreciate community spirit, we must also uphold the integrity and tranquility of our neighborhood. What starts as joy can quickly devolve into chaos and disruption." Another neighbor, Mr. Rodriguez, spoke up. "But the mayor himself endorsed the event. He said it was a wonderful example of what this town could achieve. Are we to contradict the mayor's office?" Karen bristled. "The HOA operates independently of city governance, Mr. Rodriguez. Our bylaws are our bylaws." It was our cue. Jenna stood up, calmly and confidently. "If I may, Karen?" she asked, her voice clear and resonant. Karen, clearly annoyed but unable to refuse a direct request, nodded stiffly. "My husband and I understand the importance of maintaining a harmonious neighborhood," Jenna began, addressing the room, not just Karen. "And we certainly respect the role of the HOA. When we created our Halloween display, our intention was always to bring a little extra magic to the season, to create something unique for the children and families of Maple Street. We were overwhelmed by the positive response from our neighbors, and even more so by the mayor's decision to make it an official city event." She paused, letting that sink in. "We understand that some of the existing rules might seem vague, and that clarification is always welcome. However, we believe that any new rules should be crafted with the spirit of fostering community, not stifling it. Imagine if every holiday display, every friendly gathering, every unique expression of joy was subjected to such stringent pre-approval and limitation. Our neighborhood would become sterile, devoid of the very character that makes it a home." Then I spoke, my voice resonating with sincerity. "We're artists, Jenna and I. We put our hearts into our work. And seeing the smiles on the children's faces, hearing the laughter, that's our greatest reward. We are happy to work with the HOA to ensure any future displays are safe and respectful of our neighbors. But we would urge the board to consider the broader impact of overly restrictive rules. Do we want to be a neighborhood known for its stifling regulations, or one known for its vibrant community spirit?" The room stirred. Several neighbors murmured their agreement. The tide was turning. Karen, seeing her carefully constructed power slipping, tried to regain control. "These amendments are for the good of all residents, to prevent future excesses," she insisted, but it was too late. One of the other board members, a quiet man named Mr. Davies, cleared his throat. "Karen," he said, surprisingly firm, "I agree with the Bennetts. While clarification is needed, these proposed amendments seem overly punitive. The recent Halloween event, despite the initial concerns, was a resounding success. Perhaps we should consider encouraging community involvement rather than restricting it. I move to table these proposed amendments and form a new committee to review Article 7, Section B, with a focus on encouraging positive community engagement and balancing it with appropriate guidelines. A second was quickly offered, and the motion passed with a clear majority. Karen Lin's face, already red, turned a shade of deep purple. Her attempt to solidify her control had utterly backfired. The HOA, or at least a significant portion of it, had sided with us. Leaving the meeting, I felt a sense of vindication stronger than any fleeting media spotlight. We hadn't just saved our Halloween display. We had, in a small but significant way, helped shift the power dynamics within our neighborhood. The block party had not only been a celebration of Halloween, but a celebration of community taking back its spirit from the clutches of petty bureaucracy. Karen Lin had tried to shut down our fun, but instead, she had inadvertently sparked a movement, and that, I realized, was the true triumph. A new chapter on Maple Street. The HOA meeting marked a significant turning point on Maple Street. Karen Lin's defeat, so public and undeniable, seemed to deflate her formidable aura. She remained vice president, clinging to her title, but her influence visibly waned. Neighbors who had once deferred to her now spoke their minds, often subtly challenging her pronouncements or simply ignoring her disapproving glances. The power dynamic had undeniably shifted, and a fresh breeze of community engagement began to sweep through the neighborhood. The committee to review Article 7, Section B was indeed formed, and to our surprise, both Jenna and I were invited to be part of it. It was a deliberate move by the more progressive board members to ensure a balanced perspective. Karen Lin, predictably, was also on the committee, her presence a constant, simmering reminder of her opposition. The meetings were tedious, filled with legal jargon and lengthy debates, but we approached them with a newfound sense of purpose. We weren't just fighting for our Halloween display anymore. We were advocating for a more open, less restrictive community. We pushed for clear, unambiguous language that defined nuisance and excessive, ensuring they were based on objective criteria rather than subjective interpretations. We proposed guidelines for holiday decorations that encouraged creativity while also respecting neighbors' reasonable expectations. We even suggested a new clause promoting community events, requiring HOA support rather than arbitrary restrictions. It was a slow, painstaking process, but piece by piece, we were dismantling the very rules Karen had weaponized. Outside of HOA business, life on Maple Street began to blossom. The success of the Halloween block party seemed to awaken a latent desire for community events. Encouraged by Mayor Thompson's office, and with Jenna's natural talent for dashery organization, we found ourselves at the heart of several new initiatives. A summer movie night in the Common Park was proposed, a spring cleanup day for the neighborhood, even a small winter festival with hot cocoa and caroling. Jenna, with her event planning skills, became the unofficial coordinator for many of these, her enthusiasm contagious. I, of course, offered my technical expertise. Ensuring sound systems worked and lighting was festive. Our own careers also benefited. The publicity from the Halloween block party, especially the local news coverage and the mayor's endorsement, had put my special effects work in the spotlight. I received calls from local businesses looking for unique promotional displays, and even a few independent film projects seeking my expertise. Jenna's event planning business saw a significant boost in inquiries, with clients impressed by her ability to pull off such a large-scale, high-profile event. The cursed Carnival had indeed turned out to be a fantastic investment, far beyond our wildest dreams. Karen Lin, meanwhile, seemed to shrink. Her perfectly manicured lawn still remained pristine, a stark contrast to our ever-evolving garden, which now included a small, permanent Giggles statue, a whimsical nod to our past battle Much to Karen's visible chagrin, she no longer engaged in her passive-aggressive glares or attempted to catch us violating imaginary rules. When we encountered her at the grocery store or walking our dogs, gaze would slide away, her shoulders slumping slightly. The fierce, self-righteous glint in her eyes had been replaced by a weary resignation. It wasn't a triumphant victory, but a quiet, satisfying peace. One crisp afternoon in early spring, almost 6 months after the Halloween party, the new HOA bylaws were officially passed. They were a significant improvement, balancing community standards with encouragement for creative expression and neighborhood events. The Karen clauses, as we privately called them, had been entirely removed or significantly reworded. It was a testament to the power of collective action and the persistent efforts of our new allies within the community. That evening, Jenna and I celebrated with a quiet dinner at our favorite local restaurant. "Can you believe it, Nolan?" Jenna mused, swirling her wine. "From a formal complaint to a citywide party, and now we've actually helped rewrite the HOA rules. It's surreal." "It really is," I agreed, raising my glass. To Giggles and to Karen Lin for inadvertently sparking the best thing that ever happened to Maple Street. Jenna laughed, clinking her glass against mine. To unintended consequences, and to a neighborhood that finally found its voice. Our daily lives settled into a comfortable rhythm, a blend of work, community involvement, and our shared passions. We still brainstormed elaborate Halloween ideas, though perhaps with a slightly less frenetic intensity, knowing that the spirit of Maple Street would now embrace, rather than stifle, our creative endeavors. The cursed carnival became an annual tradition, though now it was officially part of the town's calendar. A beloved event that children and adults alike eagerly anticipated. The relationship with Mayor Thompson and his office also continued to flourish. He often sought Jenna's advice on community events, and I occasionally consulted on technical aspects for city-sponsored projects. We had become valued members of the town, not just residents, but contributors to its vibrant social fabric. One day, almost a year after the Halloween party, I was watering some plants at our front yard. The air was warm, a gentle breeze rustling the leaves of the oak tree where Giggles once stood. I saw Karen Lin walking her small poodle down the street. She was older, her posture perhaps a little less rigid than before. As she approached our house, instead of averting her gaze, she paused. "Good afternoon, Nolan," she said, her voice surprisingly soft, lacking its usual sharp edge. I was taken aback. This was the first civil conversation we'd had outside of HOA meetings in over a year. "Good afternoon, Karen," I replied, a little awkwardly. She looked at our garden, at the thriving plants, then at the small, whimsical Giggles statue nestled among the flowers. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips, a ghost of an expression I never thought I'd see on her face. "Your Halloween display last year," she said, her voice a little hesitant. "It was quite something. My grandchildren, they still talk about Giggles." My eyes widened in surprise. This was an olive branch, a concession, however small. "They do?" I asked, genuinely pleased. Karen nodded, her gaze flickering to the Giggles statue. "Yes. They tried to make their own mini carnival in their backyard this past spring. It wasn't quite the same, of course." She paused, then added, almost reluctantly, "It was impressive, Nolan, what you and Jenna created. It brought a lot of joy." And with that, she gave a small, almost imperceptible nod, tugged on her poodle's leash, and continued her walk down the street. It wasn't an apology, not explicitly, but it was an acknowledgement, a quiet surrender. It showed that even the most rigid of rules could bend, and even the most stubborn of hearts could be softened by the undeniable power of shared happiness. I stood there watching her go, a genuine smile spreading across my face. The battle with the HOA Karen had been tough, filled with frustration and anger. But the victory, measured not just in a wildly successful party or changed bylaws, but in the quiet transformation of a community, and even, perhaps, of a hardened heart, was far sweeter than any candy. Maple Street was no longer just a collection of houses. It was a home, a vibrant, connected community, all thanks to a Halloween display that simply refused to be shut down. And I, Nolan Bennett, was proud to be part of its story.